talk to everyone here. That's like a why I am wanting to do it. But at the same time, really, am I like eligible to do this? So I've been praying about this in the last week when I was giving this worship on Friday. So one of the things that God spoke to me through the pastor was, okay, so he just talked about the religious reformation that took place in 1500s, 1517. And then he said, because of this printing technology that was invented at about that time, so when Martin Luther, he put this thing, so I don't know how to speak that English, but this 95, the thing that put it on the Catholic Church, it spread out within 2 weeks to the entire nation of Germany, and it took 4 weeks to reach out to the entire European continent because of this printing technology. And then he was saying, so that's why, and you have to also pray that from you as a tool like the printing technology, you become the epitome or the instigator to spread out this gospel with this tremendous power to reach out to the entire world, something like that. And then that kind of like hit me. Okay, so right now we're at the beginning of this fourth industrial revolution, and then we're like discussing what we need to do, and then we know that we are at the beginning point. I don't know what to do about it, to be honest. I don't know either. But okay, why don't I just go back and then just start from the very bottom of my heart? So basically, just with the low heart. Okay, listen to everyone, listen to every lecture, learn myself first, and then just share what I think. So it's not lecture, to be honest. It's just sharing my thoughts about what I learned from your lecture, and then waiting about your forum too. So it's just my thought sharing. So okay, let me start. Let me share screen first. Can you guys see?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, spiritual impact. Prepare for YBOM New York. So my name is Sue again, and these slides are composed of 3 different parts. Looks so short. I try to be short, but actually each section has about 5 slides. So I'll try to be really short. So preface. So just a recap. 4 industrial revolutions, my findings while listening to your lectures, and then lastly, challenges and opportunities. Okay, so this is about preface. So just brief introduction about me. I'm a child of God, given a mission of building the temple of God in this world through my vocation of management. So in short, I am a business person by training, a business person by practice as well. Completely top to bottom to the bones, I'm a business person. But why am I here? Yes, that's why one of the reasons I feel really nervous. But basically my point is, so I actually had a lot of different exposures to different industries from my college days because of my mission. So I received the gospel, accurate gospel, when I was in college, when I was 20 years old. And then that was the time I got to find the reason to live. Of course, I'm actually a fourth generation Christian, but I didn't know why I was really living for. And when I met God when I was 20 at Year One Church over here, so then I was like, okay, I need to deliver this. I need to let everyone in the world know about this mystery so that they can find the true happiness too. So, and then what should I do? So I wanted to learn more about the world. So that's why I did a lot of internships during undergrad years. And then I started my work at Samsung Securities, just making a lot of businesses there. And then came to came to the Bay Area about 8 years ago. And that's where I started my master's degree. And then right after that, I started some work at a home builder, so real estate developer. And then because of my visa issues, I had to stop a little bit, but then I got that issue resolved, and then I started working as a chief strategy officer at Stradio from 2015-ish. So what is Stradio? What do I do? So just a little bit about my company, because this is a little bit related to the fourth industrial revolution, one of the top technologies. So let me just show you one demo video of my company. Although, so in short, we're making infrared image sensor. So what is infrared image sensor? I know Chan Young in his first lecture, he just briefly mentioned infrared technology and precision agriculture. So it's pretty much, that's one of the things that we do here as well. So but this is actually silicon, but can you see that this candle light is still visible from this infrared camera, even with the silicon green? It's because this is an infrared camera. Okay, so brief explanation. So we're making shortwave infrared technology. What is shortwave infrared? So our eyes can only see like a small portion of light. More specifically 400 up to 700 nanometers. So this is like, if you look at the rainbow color, this is like red, orange, like yellow, blah, blah, blah. And then this is like a violet. So beyond this violet, that's why we call it ultraviolet, UV. And then here, because this is red and over red, we call it infrared. Although this is invisible to the human eye, there are a lot of interesting characteristics that you can make use of if you can image this invisible shortwave infrared light. This here, we actually refer to 700 up to 1500 nanometers. Like for example, over here, if you can image that, because like moisture, like oil, they have very interesting or strong peak over here. There's like a molecular composition, so molecular resonances have really strong peak, like in the sphere range. So if you can image that, make it into a camera, then you can actually visualize your moisture level or oil level on your face. So one of the features we see from the sphere imaging is smart mirror, or like 3D QR code. Like I'll just pass on. So just brief introduction is like, if you can print something not with the visible ink, but with the infrared ink, of course invisible to you, invisible to the human eye, but if you can see it with the infrared camera, of course. And this is a precision agriculture that Chan Young, I think, mentioned before. He might have mentioned more about not shortwave, but the long wave infrared, which is a thermal camera. But anyways, what we're doing is, because shortwave infrared is really sensitive to moisture and oil, what we can do is we can just visualize the moisture level of a crop so that we can make it into an application. And one of the interesting features of sphere imaging is night vision. This is one of the most frequently used, especially in the army or in the military, because at night, although it's invisible to the eyes, there's a lot of sphere light coming onto the land that's made at the atmosphere of the Earth. So if you can image that in the outside, because there's ample sphere light, you can clearly see the roads even with that light. But the problem is the current technology utilizes something. So current technology utilizes a material that's really hard to make and it's really expensive to make. But what we did, so I'm actually Stradio is a startup. So the founders of my company about 7 years ago, they found a way to make the sphere sensor with a completely different material. So way cheaper, way smaller. When I say cheaper, the sphere camera that you can find in the market is like $20,000, the cheapest, but we can make it for like $100. So, and then we patented, so we filed some patents and received granted some of it so far. And that's how we started our company. So what this can do is maybe just like Chan Young said, we can use this sensor like a robots, or maybe we can use this for our smartphone to use it for driving at night, or you can use it and to make it into a smart mirror, like things like that. There's a lot of things we can do. But anyways, this is what I'm doing. So,
hey, Sue,
yeah.
quick question. I know the military applications, but I know you guys are focused on information for the masses. With COVID going on, and you know, I know like airports and certain checkpoints have like these sensors to kind of check like the movement of people. Are you guys seeing an uptick in adoption by individuals that may want to have access to that type of like technology?
Yeah, so that's what by the way, so I know that you know, so what's been used or what's been sold out because of this COVID-19 is the long wave infrared, which is called thermal. So if I bring this wavelength number, I just imagine what we are doing is from 700 up to 1500 nanometers, but thermal is from 8,000 nanometers up to 30,000. So this is more like a
Hey, sorry. I think you're cutting off a little. The voice is, yeah, I don't know why. Is it just me or is everybody?
Yeah, I cannot hear either.
With miking.
Really,
happened to me as well.
Hear me?
The mic, yeah.
Keep on breaking in and out.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
It's better
Okay.
now.
Yeah. Tell me when it happens again. So what we are envisioning is just like what they did, but anyways, going back. So what we're doing is sphere imaging, referring to the wavelength of 700 up or 800 up to 1600 nanometers, but long wave infrared is from 8,000 nanometers to about 13 or even 30,000 nanometers. So here's your imaging is to visible image. You just see it as like black and white because all those colors are associated with visible. This sphere imaging is closer to the visible imaging, but thermal is as the name shows, it's more about showing the heat energy of this object. So thermal imaging is really well developed by a company called FIR, so FLIR. So they really advanced the technology to a point where the camera you can see, you can actually connect to your smartphone and then just see it from your smartphone. I think you have seen it before. I hear that in Korea as well. Whenever you go like E-Mart or everywhere or every retail store, they have this clear product at the entrance. And even when you go through the gate to the airport, the thermal camera that you see is made by FLIR. But anyway, so they have advanced the technology to that point, and our vision is to democratize your imaging to that point so that everyone can use it in their everyday life as well. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, that's very helpful. And it did answer my question because it helps me to understand how this technology is being used. I will just say one thing. I got like 85% of what you said. It was still kind of cutting in and out at times, but I did get the majority of what you were relaying.
Sorry. Okay, so moving on. So it was about me now. I just wanted to clarify or just to make sure that we're all on the same page about who we are or who human beings are. So I know that you know this is actually taken out from Genesis 2:7, but I just wanted to visualize. So bear with me. This is a limitation of my drawing skills. If somebody can help me out in the future. But anyways, so let me point this out. So you know that the Lord formed them and fell from the ground. So basically, when He made us to this point, this is us.
Sorry, you're cutting off again. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Would you mind like adding your cell. Are you doing it from your computer or cell phone?
Computer.
Because you can. I heard that you can use your cell phone as your like microphone.
Or
So
maybe you can get a.
Oh yeah, that's right.
yeah, you can just mute the microphone on the computer and join on the cell phone to use it as your second voice, as a second
Yeah.
microphone.
Or do you have like AirPlay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, 1 second. Do you have a call-in number? Because I don't have Zoom on my.
Yeah, it's on the chat. Yeah, sorry. I guess the like all the distance and so on, I cannot get the right signal.
Sue, you're doing great. Just want to let you know that.
Hello.
Hello.
Is this Hyunjin?
So it's a Sue's presentation.
Okay, so did you start already? I'm sorry for the. It just ended, so the Summit Club just ended.
We're in the introduction.
Oh, okay. So it's not Hyunjin Oppa's turn yet. Okay.
Congrats on being an adult now.
Thank you.
You have to mute your lap. Yeah, I think that's good.
Oh, where's?
You have to turn off the on the volume off of the laptop if you can do that, and just so yeah, just turn off the volume of the laptop.
Okay, is that okay now?
Perfect.
Okay, great. Sorry, and thanks for patience. Okay, so going back. So up to this point, when the Lord God formed the man of the dust from the ground. So basically up to this point, we only have our body and our mental. And when he breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, this is when the Spirit of God comes in. So this is how the human beings should look like, or how we look like. So if I can depict it in this, so up to this point, this is how human beings are like. They only have flesh up to this point, but because of the Spirit, this is how human beings look like. But if you go out to the world and then you go to this like a culture class, or this, I don't know if in psychology they learn it too, because this is how I learn from my cultural strategy, or like social psychology classes. This is how they talk about culture, like how they talk about human beings. They have mental, they have physical, blah blah blah. So this is like subjective culture, this is objective culture. That's how we learn.
but we have to bear in mind that we human beings have the spirit. And what I mean by that is, okay, that actually take us to the understanding about the world. So man was created as a spiritual being. So what that means is, depending on how much spiritual power has come upon him, he can overcome the limitations of flesh. So what that means is, like, if you think about it really simple, we're really small and we're smaller than maybe an elephant, but we can still manage or control them. Or we are not as strong as like lions or tigers, but we can still control them and things like that. Why is that possible? So basically one very core explanation is that because human beings have the spirit, that they can go beyond their limitations of the flesh. So that's the main cause. So think about it. But the fact is, in the spiritual realm, there are two different kinds, as we all know. We were created with the Spirit of God. So when we fill ourselves with the Spirit of God, we can overcome, or we can even control and reign over every creature on the earth with that characteristic of God, because we're filled with the Spirit of God. But because of the Genesis chapter 3 problem, or because of the original sin, we lost all that, meaning that because we're a spiritual being, we're still affected by the spiritual existence. Now this time it's the forces of darkness, or Satan, or the demons. So that's, again, if that's our spiritual state, darkness, chaos, and void, then the physical world, mental, physical, will be affected by the spirit. So I kind of depicted, this is what I see about the world. So there are so many human beings on the earth, but I thought we can actually categorize those people into 4. So number 1, this is the child of God filled with the Holy Spirit, top to bottom. So everything he does, because he's filled with the Holy Spirit, it's what he feels, what he sees, how he thinks, it's affected by God. But at the same time, when it's manifested in his own life, basically God's characteristic, God's creativity, that's how it works. But there are many Christians or many children of God not filled with the Holy Spirit, then there's a chance that they can be affected by these people because they're not filled. So at the same time, there are people who are filled with demons, who are filled with the Spirit of God. You know that many people, many entrepreneurs, many leaders of the world, they meditate. Meditation is one of the methods they can fill themselves with a spirit. But if it's not the Spirit of God, of course, without the covenant of Jesus Christ, it's always the evil spirit. So when they have that power, they can be filled with another spiritual existence. Again, they can exert their power, where they can actually come to a point where they can go beyond their own limitations. And a lot of people, maybe these people, will be affected by that person. So this is the world. And I wanted to just show, there's a reason why I put there 6 people over here, 4 people over here. Actually, it could be smaller. There's more there are more non-believers on the earth than believers, right? But at the same time, how many people are filled with the spirit of Satan, as opposed to how many people filled with God? So we're living in this earth. This is how the world looks like right now, and then we have to understand this first before moving on to discuss the spiritual impact. So one more point is just that what I just made. Depending on the spiritual state, man's mental and physical will be affected. But at the same time, how the spirit will be affected is the opposite. So there's just 2 ways going on. So spirit is manifested to your bodies, or via your flesh, but at the same time you receive impact by interacting with other objects or other people through your body, because human beings are composed of both, fits both flesh and spirit. So this should be understood first. So bottom line, so drawing on all those facts. Number one, there are only two sides in the spiritual realm. Yeah, it's black and white. It's either God or Satan. There's no in between. There's not like, oh, okay, so I was going to do it for God, but maybe it was for God, but maybe it was for Satan. It's just a little bit, no, there's nothing like that. It's completely for God or against God. Number two, flesh is not good or evil by itself, as you can see here. So flesh itself here is not good or evil, because to God's eyes, God is a spirit. To God's eyes, it's about this. Are you on God's side or are you on Satan's side? So it's about by which spirit you are affected. That's what's important. The flesh, just like I mentioned, the spiritual power is manifested via our flesh, and our souls are affected by what comes through our flesh. So if we have this bottom line, I think it will be easier to discuss what the spiritual impact would be in this fourth industrial revolution age, and at the same time what we can do about this. Moving on. So I just wanted to recap the four industrial revolutions with my perspective. So here's a timeline. So we know that it started about 1760s or even before, when someone invented or discovered some like a steam engine, or they discovered something about light. So first industrial revolution, we know that it can be categorized by like coal, water, or as a steam engine. But basically how I can categorize that is the start of mechanization. So people started to make some hardware, some robots, or some apparatus, basically. They invented something. So that's why urbanization happened, and people started to move from farms or their crafting shops to cities. And here, how I see it is there's more of a population density, like a higher density happening in cities. People get together in cities more and more, get to live with each other closer. And here you can see, you know that during the first industrial revolution, there was this camera invented, at the same time, telegraph invented. So it kind of led to the second industrial revolution that happened in about 1870s, right, 1860s. And you again know that during these times, telephone was invented, and like motion pictures was invented, car and airplanes. So you can see that because of the technologies invented or developed during the first industrial revolution, there's more development. And then now it's starting to become part of our lives. And there's more mobility because of cars, because of airplanes. Now you can go to maybe from New York to Korea way faster than before, post times of course. And then because of telephones, you get to talk to each other, like through phones, something like that, basically connecting people by getting on something or via like visuals or via like audios, something like that. So this global mobility, it increases across not just cities or farms, but to countries and continents. That's what happened during the second industrial revolution. And third industrial revolution, we know that it's basically digital connection. Now people are connected, not physically, but via online. So computers, meaning desktops, also our personal computers or mobile phones or even smartphones. And that's when we actually discovered or made the first rockets too. And then now we're at the beginning of the fourth industrial revolution. And as we all know, this is like a mixture of human beings, robots, and then human beings looking into the screen to connect with humans, but you don't know if this is really human or this is just the AI made human being in the internet. So basically, there's a mixture of basically cyber-physical world. That's what we see in the fourth industrial revolution. And So what's important about that? So this is my translation. So during the first industrial revolution, introduction of machines, mechanization. So how I saw that is this is the incipient form of machine as a human body. So human beings started to make something, so mimic this hardware or the flesh or the body of a human being. So helping human in that way. And there's the increase of human density. And second industrial revolution, there's this widespread adoption of machines because of the invention of electricity. And then of course that leads to steel, that leads to oil, like all these industries and businesses arising from that. But basically because of the invention or more development of electricity, there's this widespread adoption of machines in the human life. So developed form of machine as a human body, it's getting closer and getting more, getting into the human life. And there's this increase of human mobility. And during the third industrial revolution, there's widespread adoption of digital technology. And then this I see as the incipient form of machine as a human mind. So if you recall the graph diagram that I showed you before, so human beings are made of flesh and spirit, but in the flesh part, you have the mental part, physical as a body part. And then you can see that how this is developing, making from the body part, mimicking that, but then there's this development of the software part or the mind part during the third industrial revolution. That's how I see it. And there's this increase of selective human connection via online. During the third industrial revolution, what I also see is here, you are actually connecting with others with their phone or with your desktop. Basically, one click will make a decision, right? So it's really easy. But at the same time, what that means is, okay, I choose what I want, basically. If you're in a classroom, you have to actually mingle with each other and you have to deal with this person in person, then there are things that you have to encounter or you have to deal with even if you choose not to. And that's one of the main sources of learning actually, because you are not making decisions that sometimes that inputs the kind of information that you would not have if you were willing to seek that information because you did not know about that from the first place. But in this digital world, one of the I think loopholes, or one of the things that we have to also think is that because you are making decisions, you could be bound within yourselves that you are getting to know what you think you know, or you are knowing what, basically seeking new information within your own world alone, which can make you more stupid and stupid. But anyways, that's why I said selective human connection via online. But anyways, one point I wanted to make, it's just popped up in my mind while just looking at all this history. Wait a minute, so during the second industrial revolution, we can think of a lot of Christians, especially from America. Oh, this guy, because of this motivation that he had, or because of this prayer topic that he had, think about him. This is how much of blessing he received, like blah, blah, blah. One that example person is Rockefeller, right? On the right side over here. We know that but like one of the things that we hear most often is, he always went to church like at least 45 minutes before the worship starts, and he really prayed, blah, blah, blah. And then there are like 10 things that his mom taught him, like what you need to do at church, things like that. We know that, of course, there are a lot of discussions and debates about him. Let's just set it aside. Let's just look at it from God's perspective. So John Rockefeller, he had a reason. We know that he ended up building thousands of churches in America. He ended up building a lot of universities in America, right? From God's perspective, if you look at these times at the same time as a Korean, I also know that this is the time when American missionaries came to Korea a lot, and then they started imprinting or started planting the seeds of gospel in Korea. That's like the heyday, I think. And then if you look at, that's why if you look at the hymns of the Korean Bible, you can see that a lot of hymns actually came from this period, from these American missionaries. But anyways, there was a reason, because during these days, God had to plant these churches across America, and he had to bless someone to do that, who had the vision, who saw the needs. I think John Rockefeller was one person. But anyways, we can describe the second industrial revolution age, I think, with three main keywords: electricity, invention, and steel and oil. Because they made a way to make the steel really a loss of mass production of steel. So, and then they started building all this infrastructure in nations and countries and cars that led to making cars as well. And that's why petroleum or oil starting to be used as a main source of energy, like for cars, planes. But anyways, electricity, we can think of Thomas Edison, right? Of course, Tesla as well, but let's just put Thomas over here. And steel king, we know that Andrew Carnegie was the one. And oil, John D. Rockefeller. So all these people. And if you think about it, how they utilized and how they rode up onto this flow of the second industrial revolution by inventing, by making, or by taking advantage of this age, or taking advantage of this age. So that's one of the, I think, points that we can discuss later on or think about in the longer term. And during the third industrial revolution, we know that these are all non-Christians, but anyways, they made a really big contribution to help this third industrial revolution come to reality. And I just wanted to point this out, what kind of vision they had. You know that Steve Jobs, when he founded Apple for the first time, this is the vision that he had: a computer in the hands of everyday people. And he made that happen, right? Not just a MacBook, but with iPhone. Basically, he made a computer in the hands of everyday people. Back then, when Apple was founded, you know that all the computers were really big and it was only owned by all these enterprises. But the term that he used was a computer for the rest of us. But if put it in another way, computer in the hands of everyday people. And he made it happen. And Bill Gates, when he founded Microsoft, this was his vision. You know that he's a software maker and that he's a hardware maker, right? That's how people describe these companies, Microsoft and Apple. But anyways, Bill Gates, a computer on every desk and in every home, running Microsoft software. So think about how they saw this emergence of the third industrial revolution, although they didn't, even if they didn't see this word, how they saw this emergence of a new age, new era, and how they took advantage of it. So that's the point that I wanted to make. And again, human versus computer, human beings, mental, this is like a software, that's how I see it. And physical, our body, it's like a hardware. And in order to mimic this hardware, we already have desktops, computers, and mobile phones already in place. Now people are trying to make more and more computers to help our lives better. So robots, maybe many forms of robots, but this is a one form, and drones or like this like AR, like a wearable in the form of glasses. So there are many other types of hardware that we can make, but right now people are saying like IoT is just connecting whatever hardware is out there, but at the same time they're trying to make a new type of wearables which could maybe replace or help the mobile phones, because they say still you have to carry this around. This is a little cumbersome. So if I can just have it on my body like a wearable, that's why wearables are on the rise as well. And mental software. I know that you guys talked about operating systems and apps. So operating system, because one of the reasons why AR, VR, MR, they cannot take place so fast enough is because there's no operating system that has become, I have to use the word standardized. It doesn't mean that it's just overtakes everything, but what I mean is like everyone gets on this operating system to make something. For AR, VR, MR, many types of new hardware, they don't have this operating system built in yet. So web, we do know. We know there's like for operating system for web, we know that we have like Chrome, we have like Explorer, something like that. And for mobile, we know that there's like iOS, or there's like Android, we know that. But for other devices, what do we have? We still don't have it. And another reason that I took this Steve Jobs and Bill Gates example was they made this happen. They knew that in order to spread out this new hardware, there should be an operating system or application altogether. And they were really successful in doing that, in actualizing that. But anyways, apps. There are so many types of apps. I just listed some of them. And of course, there's social media like Facebook, like YouTube, or lifestyle, utility, entertainment, news. But what else? What else can we make to talk to people? Anyways, and then now moving on to challenges and opportunities. Takeaways. I actually kind of nailed it down to 3 words, what's happening right now. Number 1, globalization. We all know. So in theory, we can access 4 billion people on Earth via internet as of 2019. So one stat says that right now on the Earth, there are about 4 billion people who have access to the internet. Meaning, in theory, we can access to those people, even if they're maybe in small rural village in Africa, we have access to them, right? What does that mean? What does it imply? So we can expose ourselves, so that's one thing that we have to think about. But at the same time, it means we can expose ourselves to any kind of information on the globe 24/7. So not just us, but like young kids, any person with this, they are exposed to any type of information. It's not just about, oh, this is so gospel-centric or non-gospel-centric, but true information and fake information. Maybe the news, maybe the video that he's watching was just made up by maybe just AI. Completely untrue. Even the feature, even the voice, basically it's all made up, but maybe a little kid growing up is watching this, he might believe that this is true. So something like that could happen. Number 2, personalization. In the digital world, we are inclined to make decisions on my preferences alone. This is what I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation. So however, the source of new information is in fact manipulated by algorithms, as of course big data, AI, we all mentioned during that class. But is it really bad? But at the same time, like, aren't all those sales and marketers, aren't they taking advantage of it? Like, for example, think about Google Ads, what they're doing. They learn about Google algorithm, and then they utilize that to basically make their product reach out to those people out there in the world. And if we can think about it, then what can we do with it? There is something that we can do with that too. Number 3, digitization. With the development of hardware and software, machines are becoming more like humans. And it's gonna be harder and harder, maybe for younger generation, to distinguish humans and machine, I think. And of course, that's one aspect. And at the same time, that means there could be more replacement of human beings with machines, which all means that spirituality will be increasingly important as a distinguishing factor between humans and machines. So again, going back to these 5 senses. So I said before at the beginning that human beings, of course, exert their spirituality through their body, but at the same time, they get affected through body, but through the 5 senses, as we all know. So that's why if you think about the trend, like the invention of telegraph, the invention of camera, then moving motion pictures, and then telephones, and then now videos, audios, the desktops, and mobile phones. If you think about it, basically people are trying to mimic these senses of human beings. And I think up to this far, of course, we can do this, right? And we can do this, right? And we are trying to do this too. And there's a lot of efforts trying to mimic this too. And what about this? Like, how much have we come so far? And by the way, when I say people are really trying to mimic this and then they have achieved this far, it's not about just mimicking, oh, okay, so I see what I see, something like camera, okay, just like eyes. But there's more depth to it, just like what I said about my company. It's like seeing what even the human eye cannot see. That's one thing, but at the same time, you know, if they are all put together, basically the information will go through our brain and they interpret that. And then that's how people try to make decisions, or people make their or feel about something. So basically, it all gets to the brain of a human being. So how much of studies have been done so far is like, okay, then when brain interprets information through ear, through eyes, which is more effective to the human brain? Like, okay, and they have done that kind of research, even that kind of research back in 1970s, already 50 years ago. Like, for example, I speak to you, but the content actually doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's not going to affect the decision making of that human being. The content itself will affect only 7% of the human being. But what they actually really care is 93% of the rest. What that is about how you look, the tone you make, and then the gesture you make. That's gonna affect the decision making of that person 93% of time, something like that. And even like, okay, so human beings, like how fast they can interpret, they can process this information, like 16 different images per second. So for example, if that's 16, then okay, even if they cannot acknowledge with their conscience, like if that image goes really fast, although they do not acknowledge, that still gets to be imprinted in their brain. Something like that. This is the extent that they have done about how people bring in this information through their five senses, how they get to be processed in their brains. So just think about this. How much has been digitized and what can we do about it? So this is one example, by the way. This is about thermal. So what I wanted to show was actually this. 1 second. This is about thermal camera. I don't know if you have seen this news. So when there was this Boston bombing incident about 7 years ago, the fact he of course hid, so people couldn't find him. And this is how people found them. He was hiding himself in a boat in this in the suburban area of Boston. He was hiding beneath this cover of a boat. How will you find him? And they actually used this thermal camera out here. And because human beings exert heat, especially at night, with thermal camera, you know this light over here, this is because there's a human. This is the image of the thermal camera. So he was pulled, wounded from the tarpaulin covered boat in a garden in the Boston suburb of Watertown. But anyways, the point that I was trying to make was, how can we take advantage, or how can we utilize or control this situation? Like the point, this is an example of hardware that I was trying to make. This was the beginning. If you look at this is just a graph about which material and at which wavelength. If you can image that, what is the temperature that you can image? This is just a finding from maybe your chemistry class. can you imagine with this? This is what you learn from your schools. Can you imagine that this is what you can do? Like, it's not just like, okay, I learned about this. You know, this is 2600 degrees Celsius. Like, if you can image with the 1000 nanometer image camera, that's not the extent they thought about, all those inventors. From this, they envisioned this. So the reason I brought this was one of the discussions that you had during the first robot class. I thought that one of the comments that Chanyoung made was really fascinating. When you saw this Boston Dynamics, the robot, the prototype, and then when you saw this, the Buddhist robot thing, when it was a prototype, I couldn't imagine that that's what's going to happen either. But somebody, when he saw this type of information, they had a vision up to this point. They had a vision up to that point. Okay, I'm starting from here. And this, I think we can do. Of course, we need to do, and we can do as a human being, because we are all spiritual beings. We can go beyond our own physical limitations. But anyways, this is the hardware part. And about the software part, this is a Google. And I think you think that there's only little things, so small things that Google do. This is a list of Google apps, by the way. There's a lot of products that they make. Which means there's a lot of information they get there. Not just the Google search engine, Chrome, or like Google Play, or like Google Maps. I mean, I can even count. Which means this is, if we use all these apps, basically these are all associated with our activities every day. They gather all the information. In other words, they could imagine, if I make something like this, then this is the method by which I can interpret their everyday life and their preferences and what their thought processes are, their activities, their preferences. They could envision this from some small ideas. So, and one of the things that I think Google is really smart about also is they're trying to uncover our true selves. I don't know if you know about Evernote, the startup Evernote that existed before, or actually we still use it, right? I think one of the reasons why Evernote could not go too big was because, or I think one of the reasons why I think Google is way more smart is, okay, not that Google is way more smart is, okay, Evernote, and especially Facebook, these all three. Facebook is not about your true self. You're trying to put you up. It's like you have to put you up in front of everyone else, could be making up. It's just one moment of your lifetime. It could not be your true self. But Evernote actually took a completely opposite direction. Okay, this is about your true self. Just write down whatever you need. But what's another benefit that I can get from it using Evernote? Other than maybe I can use Google Docs, maybe I can use just Dropbox just to sync it, just to make a note from anywhere. So they saw this human nature, but they could not provide another benefit to the human being. But I think that Google is really smart. When you search for information, that's your true self. You do not try to, how do I put it, like masquerade yourself to look nicer. It's your true self, right? Using maps, using calendars, using emails. It's not about faking yourself. It's about your true self. I think that's why one of the reasons why Google is really good at making or drawing quality information. But anyways, the reason I'm talking about this is not to praise Google, but to throw out this topic about how can we draw or utilize this quality information about people. So just one example, I thought I try not to use too many Google products because I want to protect myself, but this is how much I used it. This is actually driven from September 1st, 2019, during the North Business conference last year, I was trying to delete the information from that day. Oh my God, I already used 10 products of Google's on that very one day. Google Ads, Google Assistant, Discover, Gmail apps, Play Store, image search, map search, YouTube. 10 products of Google's, and how they record my information is just not just okay. This is the extent. They recorded the fact that I saw Gmail ads. They recorded the fact that I opened up the Google map and then just closed it down. And they recorded the fact that I checked the area in Google Maps because it was my first time going to that location in Seattle. So I'm like, oh my God, this is so freaking. But at the same time, they're really good at what kind of information I have to gather in order to understand this person. Anyways, let's see. Okay, so questions. 2 questions, and these are discussion topics. We know that human beings were created to be this way. When we recover God's own image, then we were given the blessing of be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it and have dominion over everything that he has created. Then number 1, about myself. Then how can I be filled with the Holy Spirit? How can I be filled with the Spirit of God? That's about verse 27. The next topic, of course, is toward the world then. How can I influence the world? As in verse 28. And here the key facts to remember is that number 1, we interact with one another through our 5 senses. Number 2, the Spirit is delivered through the 5 senses. So that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you so much. Does anyone have any comments or question that you guys want to deliver to Sue?
Yeah, David and Sharon. David.
Yes. Like I think instead of question, I kind of want to make a comment if it's okay. Kind of reinforce what Sue has mentioned. So being in the industry myself, I also kind of felt that it is really the 5 senses, you know, mimicking how can we digitize, you know, to satisfy or to meet the requirements of the 5 senses. And one of my, so most of you already know my specialty is actually in personalization, and the way that it is doing right now, I don't know, like for other people who don't have the spiritual aspect, like one of the circles, they think of it as a software, but it's way beyond that. I think there's a spiritual understanding in like how do we better understand objects, meaning in my use case, let's say recommending a piece of video to a user. How do I better understand about this piece of video? The sound, the image, the settings, the characters, the theme, plot, everything. How do I better understand it first? And then how do I better understand human behavior? Like, how do I understand how I feel? So this is basically the root, right? So we want to figure out how you feel as a human being, how you think, and how you will be influenced your decision making, everything through some sort of algorithm, math or something. So this is just a comment to reinforce like the spirituality with the beginning of 4th Industrial Revolution. it's all coming from the spirit. And that's leading the world. You know, you see the timeline that Sue has posted. It's becoming more and more into that smaller circle. And we're in the midst of that. So I think if you're not spiritually aware, just, you know, using Gmail, I mean, this is our daily life. We'll have to use it. You know, this is a utility. We can't escape. It's not like I'm not gonna use email anymore, but we do have to be fully aware. I think this is the whole theme of the fourth IR. How do we be spiritually aware? How do we be filled by the Spirit all the time, so that we can see the spiritual flow? So I'm just trying to share that perspective. Yeah.
If it's okay for me to
Yeah.
comment as well. You know, I agree with everything that David said, and Shu, thank you so much for the presentation. But also, kind of like what was mentioned, me being in the industry as well, like I see all this advancement in technology and connectedness and trying to imitate humans as a new form of addiction going forward. I don't know if people realize how accurate and how scary these advanced technologies are going to know or help uncover our inner desires, right? Sue kind of mentioned already on how much information Google is collecting and how it recommends things to you and how it just gathers all this information about you. So in the future, you might be presented with things that you didn't even know you were looking for or aware of, and they're just presented to you. And I think people can get sucked into that so easily. But just like with the other revolutions, a lot of people are going to lose their jobs, right? And funny enough, we always think about like all the blue collar jobs that were lost during the technology integrations and the globalization, but now even more so, the white collar jobs are also going to be in danger. And so from this, I think as we hold, knowing the spiritual world and being prepared for this, I think we can help provide answers for those that are going to get lost through addiction or lost through turmoil once, you know, these things start happening.
Okay, so this is Ed. I have a couple of perspectives, and I agree with everything Sue's pointed out and the prior two comments. But my thought is, I feel like this is a great summation, and you know, I feel like it's a call to action. And so, you know, it may be a function of you know, where Sue and I are in our careers and how, you know, we are a bit older and we've seen a bit more things. But the thing that resonated with me the most was how do we take advantage of the age the same way that an Edison or a Carnegie or a Rockefeller did. And I know, like, depending upon like whether you're a high school student that's listening to this or you know, working professional, somewhere in between, you know, your immediate concern might be like, how do I get a job, or like, am I going to get into school? But I feel like what Sue has summarized for us was, number one, it was definitely good to get exposure and to think about how we can prepare for this age. But what really resonated with me, and you know, it's what I talk about behind closed doors with people like Sue and like Jay and David Chow is how do we take this? How do we leverage it? How do we take advantage of this? Because it's apparent that it's right before us. And again, I don't want to get like too deep into this, but like I do feel like the summation and the overview is helpful, because regardless of like where we are in our stage, in our careers, our age. I think the spiritual lessons that Sue has highlighted, it's applicable to all, and we should think about that as it relates to us individually and the individual choices. But I feel like, if there was an Esther, going back to today's business message, if there was an Esther that God raised to basically be at the most important time, then I feel like there were the Mordecais, and so maybe this is a comment for some of the older folks on this, but how do we leverage, how do we take advantage of all the things that kind of Sue highlighted in order for the remnants on this call, in order for the Esthers on this call to basically be used by God to block disasters going forward?
Yeah, I guess maybe a question. I totally agree with Eddie, what he said. Maybe a question for Sue. By the way, amazing presentation. We have young remnants in here as well, and now that we know that the very first thing we have to know is to come from the Spirit, that direction. But is there anything that you want to make to suggest remnants to, like what Eddie said, better leverage, like the actual practice that they should be kind of, also focus on? Is there any recommendations in addition to, of course, always have that spiritual sometime? What else do you have in recommendation for the remnants?
Well, I think, first of all, it's really important to actually reach the spiritual summit. It's not like, oh, by the way, I do 3 2 days every single day, but it's about hearing the voice of God. Like, one of the things that I discovered when I was in my 20s is that looking at Noah, like, if you thought about yourself from your present reality or your present capabilities, you can never make an ark because there was no rain, there was no flood up to that age. So he was given the grace of God to hear the voice of God to make the ark, which was about the age to come. He was able to make an ark which basically conquered the entire world, right? So that's how important it is. Like, for now, I think Eddie, actually the point that Eddie made was that was the real point that I was trying to make. So we know that it's coming, but we can take advantage of it because we are all spiritual beings. If we don't with the Spirit of God, then those people with the spirit of Satan, they will do it. So it's about the spiritual warfare. See, during the Second Industrial Revolution, some Christians did it, but why can we not? If we're given this mission to restore the churches in America, basically. So it's really important to do that first. And if you really are able to do that, everything else will follow. You will see it. Like, it's like if you see the vision of making this Buddha robot, you start from the very bottom and you know what to do, right? That's like that. If I can add one more comment, it's actually kind of mentioned during the presentation as well. Try to meet with other people, not only within your arena, like, okay, so I'm a data scientist and I meet with data scientists. No, it's going to narrow your viewpoints about the world. Everything's connected at the end of the day. So it's not just about data science, it's about running businesses. It's about taking it to the world. Basically, this involves every single person. All people have different characters, different skill sets, different talents. They have to all come together. And if you have a picture of which person, which skill set, which talent will go in where, then it's gonna help at the end as well. And then knowing which can come from which direction, like, okay, there's going to be this kind of change in the age from this industry, from that skill set, and how that's going to affect my skill set. Something like that, if you have that viewpoint, of course, that's going to be helpful, right? So I think especially if you're an undergrad, I would say meet as many people as possible, not only according to your preferences. Sometimes you need to meet with someone that you don't like. I think it's really a blessing that you have a church to go to, because that's the best place to do that, basically. For me, it was a case. And at the same time, travel a lot. So travel a lot so that you can see way different parts of the world, not just underdeveloped, or not just developed, but really a range of different countries at different stages. Yeah, I guess that's it.
Thank you. May I also add a last comment to that?
Yeah, sure.
No, sorry to make it this longer, but yeah, and I mean, great presentation, really, I was so touched and impressed. And while listening to that, listening to the presentation, 3 books came in my mind. First book is, of course, the Bible. Second is the 1984, and third is the Brave New World. And through your presentation and through all these lectures, we saw that what was written in those books are coming true. And the common point of those books are that authors were inspired and filled with the Spirit, either there is God's Spirit or there is Satan's Spirit. So anyways, if you're filled with the Spirit, you can predict the future. You can write the future, what exactly gonna happen. That's the first thing. And second thing is that I guess that is why we need to teach remnants how to read both Bible and both literature. As I guess that's also as important as meeting people, communicating with them, and traveling.
Yeah, completely agree. If you don't have that capability to basically listen to the voice of God, or to be able to be inspired by God, basically reading books, meeting people, you won't have the ability to discern what is right and what is wrong, what is God's perspective, what is not. So basically, you need to have the ability to interpret, or to be able to listen to the voice of God first, definitely. I completely agree.
First, thank you so much for your lecture. First of all, let us give a round of applause to Sue. Thank you for, I think that we are running out of time, so I don't think we will be able to listen to Assistant Pastor Jun, but we have next week before we prepare for the presentation in the May Remnant Day. So I'll see you guys next week, and most of you, I'll see you guys at the intensive training. Thank you.
Thank
Have a great
you,
day, everyone.
and thank you, Sue.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Sue.
Sue.
Very much.
Thanks, Sue. This is great. Thank you.
Bye.